What does the future of Illini basketball recruiting look like? Let's talk about it. Locked On Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you would like to support the show, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It costs you guys nothing, and it continues to help the channel grow. My name is Sunny Verma. I can now say officially credentialed Big Ten media member. If you'd like to chat, find me at IlliniCast or at the Sunny V on X or on Twitter. I got a fun episode for you today. I'm going to be talking about the future of what I foresee Illini basketball recruiting to look like. There's a new basketball offer, as there seems to be every couple of days now. And finally, I'm going to replay my segment on Locked On College Football. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. About a week ago, the boys at Sleepers Media released a video when the Caden Boozer news started trickling out. They released a video very quickly talking about Illinois' involvement with Caden. And I wanted to actually kind of respond to that video almost immediately, but things got in the way. Planning for Big Ten Media Days got in the way. And so I really wasn't able to, and I constantly had to delay it until today. And now, before I say anything, I just want to say I have nothing against the Sleepers Media guys. I actually really enjoy their content. They're in my rotation of shows that I try to cycle through, on a weekly basis. So this is simply one of those just disagreements. I like Greg. Greg and I, we text back and forth via Twitter every now and then. And obviously former friend of the show and someone who I plan on having back when the season comes closer. So this is nothing disparaging towards those guys. It's a simple disagreement. And the disagreement comes from, again, when they were talking about Illinois offering Caden Boozer, it was, I believe, Derek Piper's report. They talked about how the likelihood of Caden coming to Champaign wasn't very high. And also talking about a couple of weeks earlier when we had offered Jasper Johnson, how he came to visit, but the folks talking to them really suggested that it was going to be a unserious visit. So Greg actually wanted to bring up the talking point about whether Illinois' involvement with all these premium 5-stars was, in his words, all flash, no substance. And it was an interesting point, and I almost understand why they said it, but I don't think I could disagree any more than I already do. Now, the aforementioned Jasper Johnson came up with his list of Final 5 schools, and guess what? Illinois was not on the list, almost confirming what our friends over there at Sleepers said about a week ago. But this was a recruitment that Orlando Antigua got in very, very late. Let me start off this way. Orlando Antigua was hired in late April. I believe it was April 21 or maybe the 22nd. So in the 3 months that he's been hired, Orlando has brought in Illinois' starting center from Europe. It was Orlando's relationship to the Visich family that brought him to Champaign. And a couple weeks ago, Orlando also brought in what I'm projecting to be our starting small forward, Will Riley, 5-star Will Riley. So just in a 3-month span, Orlando has already brought in 40% of our starting lineup next year. Guys that before Orlando was involved with the staff, I don't think we would be in the hunt for. It didn't work out with Jasper Johnson. I don't think it's going to work out with Caden Boozer. But I think there's a method to all this madness. I've talked about this before. Illinois, the name, the brand, brings clicks and brings views. Even though Illinois may not have a shot at a guy like Jasper Johnson, or a Caden Boozer, I would say it's more so because we're entering the relationship so late. But I come from a marketing background. That's where my previous 9-to-5 career is from. There's another angle to all this. Right now, Illinois basketball on a recruiting front is now starting to be associated with the highest of high prospects. It may not bring in a 5-star in 2025, but our association with a guy like Jasper Johnson, who's coming to visit, our association with Caden Boozer, who may be coming to visit, what that does is it puts us on the same tier as the other Blue Bloods that traditionally get the 5-star visits. The only reason Greg would say something like that is because previously, historically, Illinois wasn't involved in these high-level recruitments. But times are changing. Illinois has the backing, both financially with the NIL game, and we've got the recruiting staff. I would be hard-pressed, and I assure you, I'm not saying this because of any sort of bias. When you think about Brad Underwood, Orlando Antigua, Tim Anderson, and Jeff Alexander, you're talking about a coaching staff, 4 guys who I would take their recruiting abilities against anybody else in the country. So Illinois now has 4 very good recruiters. Brad Underwood, a top 10 coach in America, and what I would guess to be a top 10, maybe top 15 NIL game in the entire country. So bringing a guy like Orlando Antigua, we're not wasting our time bringing in a guy like Jasper Johnson. What we're starting to do is wetting our feet in this new company that we're about to join. Right now, it's noteworthy when Illinois offers a top 15 player. The Illini fan base gets excited. The national media love talking about it because we bring the views. But in a year, 2 years, Illinois being involved with these 5-star prospects is going to be no different than Duke being involved. No different than North Carolina being involved. I'm not remotely saying that Illinois is Duke or Illinois is Kentucky or North Carolina. I hope that's not what you read into this. Obviously, those programs have decades of success that we haven't even come close to. What I'm talking about is this point moving forward on the recruiting trail. The way college basketball is trending, you're going to have the big boys. You're going to have some schools who are able to level up when it comes to adjusting to what recruiting is going to become. And you're going to have some schools who can't quite cut it at that sort of level. Illinois plans on being at the big boy table. We had a very good recruiting staff before. And then in late April, what Brad Underwood did is brought in arguably the best assistant coach in all of college basketball. And I'm not even talking about recruiting. Orlando is just as good at coaching bigs on the court. And so I understand what Greg's saying with all flash, no substance, but I don't think it could be farther from the truth. Orlando's already brought in 2/5 of our starting lineup next year, a team that many project to be top 5 in the Big Ten, some even higher. I'm just trying to temper my personal enthusiasm. But he's gotten us involved in visits from some of the top players in the 2025 class. Sure, they may not have worked out yet. There's plenty of time. But I think it's setting the foundation of having Illinois involved with all the blue chip prospects moving forward. And so when a guy in the 2026 class who's rated in the top 10 gets an offer from Duke, gets an offer from Arizona, he doesn't look at getting an offer from Illinois any differently. In fact, ideally, I think we want to be at the point where if a prospect is top 20 in the country, he almost expects an offer from Illinois. It's not going to always work out, but it doesn't always work out for Duke or Kentucky or North Carolina either. And it's, at least right off the bat, it's going to work out less for us. But 3 years ago, we weren't involved remotely in a Jasper Johnson recruitment. We wouldn't be able to get a guy like that onto campus for an official visit. Illinois has always been a good, not elite program when it comes to college basketball. Top 15 overall in wins. Obviously, we don't have the national championships that some other schools have to kind of be amongst the greatest of great. But Illinois being involved in the recruitments of the best players in the world is something that I expect to be in the norm moving forward. And my message to national media outlets out there is get used to it. We have about a month and a half left of Major League Baseball season. And if you're a Cubs fan, there's really no reason to watch any games anymore unless you're going to Wrigley Field. And should I decide to make it out for a game, I'll tell you I'll be using the Game Time app. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It's funny, I talk about in the first segment about the future of Illinois recruitments and how we're going to be involved with the top 10, top 15, top 20 players in the country from here on out. And I follow that up with this segment where I'm going to be talking about an offer to a guy who's probably top 100-ish, the type of guy who we were relatively excited to get, a couple years back, who now some fans who may be spoiled with the Will Rileys and, the other 5 stars that are visiting on campus and may all of a sudden think that we're too good for a 4-star. And I hope we don't get into that sort of mindset. Anyways, I'm talking about Illinois early Wednesday morning offering Trey Maddox, the source being Trey Maddox. He tweeted it out himself. You're talking about a 6'6" guy, 180 pounds. He's a small forward. He's a 3-star by On3, and Rivals has him as high as 84. Rivals has him the highest as a 4-star. We're the 4th power conference team to offer him. He's got offers from Georgia Tech, who we received an offer from also Wednesday morning, I believe. Also Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Radford, and South Florida. Now, again, I'm talking about going up against the Dukes and North Carolinas in the first segments, and then I follow it up with going up against Georgia Tech and a Virginia Tech in our latest recruiting offer. So again, recruiting itself is fluid, but let's be honest here. When you're trying to build a basketball team, especially in the NIL era, you would be very hard-pressed to have 12 guys on your roster all making top dollar. For every type of Jasper Johnson, Jeremiah Fierce type of stud you want to land, that's going to cost you a substantial amount of NIL funds. At some point, you're going to also have to balance your roster out with guys who will probably stick around a couple seasons at the college basketball level and aren't going to break your bank. Illinois has a good NIL strategy. We've got a pretty decent war chest, but it's not unlimited. So at some point, Brad does need to always keep in mind how to build the ultimate roster, especially with the amount of turnover that happens in college basketball these days. There's some guys who you want who don't necessarily need to have the expectations of having a huge role in their first season. and wanting to make $500,000. You want good cultural, you want good locker room guys who continue to get better every practice. And I think Trey Maddox could be one of those guys. He's got a very solid skill set. Again, 6'6", 180. You'd imagine by the time he gets to Champaign, if you were to come to Champaign, you're talking about a guy, after a summer with Fletch, 6'6", 200 pounds. By definition, I believe he's a small forward, but again, what does Brad Underwood like to do? He likes to be flexible in his lineups. So Trey's a kid that could play the 3, play the 2. He's versatile. Just like Illinois needs to continue to be in their future recruiting. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As most of you know, on Tuesday, I was in Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days, an amazing experience. Thank you all so much for affording me that opportunity. And the way you guys have done that is by supporting the channel. That's by your likes, your subscriptions. My audio downloads are growing by the day, and thank you so much for that. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, do me a quick favor. Go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and subscribe to me on there as well. It's the best way for me to grow this channel because automatically it'll refer me to other fans of Illinois sports. And again, it does not cost you guys a thing. And what it does in turn, it gives me access to go to special places and offer you guys more in-depth content, such as my experience that I had at Big Ten Media Days on Tuesday. After everything had wrapped up, I was actually invited to the National Locked On College Football show. And they were so kind that they decided to share the segment with me, which I'm going to air now. And then I'll catch up with you guys right afterwards.
Brett Bielema took the stage for Illinois here at Big Ten Media Days and was far and away the most entertaining coach that went up there. Sunny Verma joining me here of Locked On Illini. What did you make of what Illinois' head coach said up here in Indianapolis?
Brett continues his streak of the head coach who I want to have a post-media day beer with. Basically every year that he's been coaching in the league. Each coach is allotted 15 minutes, and I think he talked for about 12 of them.
Yeah, he did. He only took one question.
There was only time for one question because he loves to talk. And, he's got stories upon stories about him. Stories, I think he talked about. He's got 16 years worth of stories now. And so, but I did get some side time with him. And Brett is one of those guys who you really saw the coaching aspect, like what he really enjoys is, growing these players into men. He talked about what he does every single year is he picks the 3 guys and he drives them literally from Champaign to Media Day. And, he kind of coaches them. Hey, these are the type of questions that are going to be coming. Easy questions, difficult questions, and then really difficult questions. But, he lets them know, hey, there's 54 players that are going to be at Big Ten Media Day. 54 of the best players in the conference. And you 3 are 3 of them. And so, he wants their players to really grow and embrace their role, their leadership role, because the season is only 40 days away. And like the 3 guys that he's bringing in, he's going to be counting on for that leadership role. You are now the face of Illinois football. Isaiah Williams is not there anymore. Drazon Newton is not there anymore. Keith Randolph is not there anymore. You guys are the next in line in the lineage of Illinois football. And so, it's just nice to see a coach who really does care about his players.
Which players did he bring, first of all? And secondly, what do you make of, what's needed from them, and why do you think those were the players that Brett Bielema brought?
Well, he talked about it in his opening presser. Like the three guys that he brought, Gabe Yakis, Seth Coleman, and Pat Bryant, are three guys who's played their entire careers for Illinois. And you don't know if that's necessarily going to happen from here on out with the way college football is looking. So,
guys just leave.
Yeah.
Even guys that are, starting. And I think you'd think traditionally of a school like Illinois, where they've been in the Big Ten as that sort of program that loses guys to the quote-unquote bigger brands.
Exactly. And he talked about actually Gabe, one of the linebackers on our team, who we decided to bring. He wanted to bring this year because he thinks he could make it to the NFL next year. Gabe is a guy who SEC teams have been trying to sniff around in the past, and that's just the reality. But Gabe trusted his coach, trusted the staff here, and now he wanted to bring Gabe to Media Day knowing that Gabe might be playing at the next level next year. And so he's the type of guy who said, I don't want to bring a player because he's he's going to be senior next year, so I'll bring him next year. It's like, no, Gabe has worked his butt off. And so he wanted to give him that opportunity this year to, really embrace this role as one of our key players.
Every coach at some level comes to media days and, is saying what media people might want to hear, what fans might want to hear. And I think every coach at some level is genuine in their confidence in the football team that they have, because they know how much work has gone into putting that team together, acquiring all the players on the roster. But the outside narrative on Illinois, it's not particularly strong. They are picked close to the bottom. I think it was 16th out of 18th in the Big Ten preseason media poll from, I believe it was USA Today.
I think it was 13.
13. Yeah, 13. But regardless, they're closer to the bottom than they are to the top. And it certainly is getting harder now. Exactly. Tony Petitti talked about bringing in the 4 new teams in Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. Illinois is one of those teams that people might look at and say it's going to get a lot harder for them to win. What do you make of Brett Bielema's confidence? Do you think it's just kind of projection? Do you think he really believes it? Somewhere in between? How should Illinois feel going into this year?
I mean, it's probably somewhere in between, but he's raised the floor substantially from where his predecessors had the team. We still kind of lack maybe the high-end talent that some of the top half of the Big Ten has, but Brett, at this point, I think Brett McMurphy released a fantastic tweet where he talked about he's got the best record in the first 3 years at Illinois since John Malkovich in the late 80s. So, again, Illinois isn't exactly a sexy brand, but we're in games. And last year, the story of last year was we lost more games by less than a touchdown than almost any other team in the country last year. And this year, he kind of talked about how...
Call you Scott Frost's
please.
Nebraska.
Oh, no, let's not do that. Let's not go there. But he just talked about, when he came to Illinois, he had to teach the players not to lose because that's just what they were kind of used to. And now he's at the point where he's trying to... Now that they're not losing, he needs to flip the switch and teach them how to win. And that's kind of what the goal of year 4 is going to be.
Yeah, and one of the guys who is not here but is going to be a large factor in whether or not Illinois gets to that point is quarterback Luke Altmaier, because this is not a great lineup of Big Ten quarterbacks. I think of the Power 4 leagues, the Big Ten is actually the weakest of the bunch at the quarterback position. But in this conference, I don't look at Luke Altmaier and see anything at this point other than a guy who, can make a throw from time to time, but his primary feature is that he can run, that he's got mobility. How does he take a step forward with his passing this year?
I think you'll be surprised, Spencer. I think, what you've kind of said is kind of the national narrative, just because everyone saw that Penn State game. And you had the 4 interceptions in the first half.
That was not great. That was not great.
It was pretty sickening. But he actually finished the season having 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions in his last 6 starts. He's a guy who improved, but because he lost, because of that Penn State first half, and then he eventually lost that job to John Paddock. And I wouldn't even say he lost the job. It's just John Paddock threw for 525 yards against Indiana, and it's hard to bench a player after he just throws for 525 yards. And so I think, a lot of people might be down on Luke, but Brett actually talked about Luke a little bit today, saying that, when they had the conversation with him last year that they were going to continue starting John Paddock, Luke did not put his head down. He instead basically just took notes and, asked John, why did you throw this? Why did you do that? Basically looking to learn. A lot of people forget that last year was Luke's first full season as a college football starter. He had his first 10 starts last year. And so, my hope is, as a sophomore, the game starts slowing down. And I genuinely think he's a top half in the Big Ten quarterback.
I don't think that's as tough of a list to crack, depending on how a couple of young guys do, like Aiden Childs at Michigan State, mega talent. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, mega talent. But I'll get you out of here on this for today's show, Sunny. What do you expect? This is kind of the unofficial start of the college football season in 2024. What do you expect from Illinois right now? What does a good season look like?
Our over-under is 5.5, and I genuinely now lean towards the over. The message about him saying, I've taught them not to lose. Now my job is to tell them how to win. I think, it kind of explains the transition process of being a head coach of a program like Illinois, who historically isn't one of the top programs in the Big Ten. But this man has years and decades of experience. He coached at Wisconsin, he coached at Arkansas, and then for a while he took a break and he learned from Bill Belichick, at the NFL level. He knows what he's doing when he took that job at Illinois. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, and it's going to take a year-by-year process, and I'm really excited to see what he has in store for year 4.
Sunny Verma, Locked On Illini, joining me live and in person here at Lucas Oil Stadium at Big Ten Media Days. Sunny, my man, appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Spencer. Thank you again, Spencer, for having me on Locked On College Football. An absolute fantastic source and super knowledgeable. And not only does he do Locked On College Football, but he also does Locked On Ducks. He's the host of the Oregon channel on this network. And again, one of the hardest working people I know. And it was nice to finally get to meet him face to face over in Indianapolis. And I'll probably bring him on here on Locked On Illini at some point in the very near future. But that just about wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for watching. For those of you stuck around to the end, my everydayers, just know I'm so appreciative of you guys. Just remember, I'm the only source out there right now giving you daily Illini content, and I continue to want to do so for as long as you guys will have me. Until then, I will see you in tomorrow's episode. ILL. Love you guys.